Rhyming Cinderella by Joshua David Ling. 1. Once upon a kitchen floor. Once upon a kitchen floor, a girl named Keavy knelt. She scrubbed away at the stone there, and few knew with what she dealt. She imagined fancies of the world, and stories to pass the time, but something inherently sad continually crossed her mind. Ever since Keavy was brought into her world, tragedy seemed to hold tight, for when she took her very first breath, her mother didn't last through the night. Her mother died, giving birth to her. There was nothing that she could have done, but this didn't stop Keavy from enjoying the rising of the sun. Her mind wandered back to a fanciful tale she had heard when she was little, a tale her father had told her when her heart was brittle. But as the memories of her father drifted right into view, something else even more terrible suddenly shifted and grew. Her father died when she was 5. She barely remembered him, but she felt certain that she knew him well, thanks to her sister Erin. The two of them had precious time when they both went to bed, telling each other the wonderful stories that would dance inside of their heads. Oh, how she longed to go outside and talk with her sister there, but Erin was to do the yard work, and Keavy was to stay right here. "Keavy!" sounded an annoyed voice, and Keavy responded brightly, "I'll be upstairs in just a few minutes." Then she ascended the stairs lightly. 2. Stepsisters. Barreling down toward Keavy, who was heading up the stairs, were her stepsisters Claudette and Colette. They were always in a pair. They were still in their sleeping clothes, but had been up for some time, and Keavy thought they needed a bath, but she wouldn't voice her mind. The oldest of the twin girls was always the first to speak. Claudette circled round Keavy while Colette didn't make a peep. A swaggering animosity permeated from Claudette, who said in a gratingly oversweet tone, "Keavy, have you not heard us yet?" Keavy tried to reply, but was countered by Colette. I know, sisters. We should make a bet. If the one with cinders for brains can guess what she hasn't done, she won't have to bathe us for a week. She'll never guess this one. But if she doesn't guess it, there should be consequence too. Keavy began to get very bored, but she couldn't leave these two. If she did, they'd cook up something even worse for her or even Erin. She lost track of the conversation. "Keavy, guess your sin." "Did I forget to feed the cat?" They giggled an obvious nope. "You've simply got to do better than that." "2 more chances, you dope." "Did I forget to clean your rooms?" "Oh my word, she's insane." "You cleaned them this morning, scrubber knees. You're really bad at this game." Then Keavy's eyes grew wide. She'd figured out what she'd neglected. She ran to the kitchen as fast as she could, leaving her stepsisters dejected. Oh well, she figured it out. It was worth the look on her face. "Come along, sister. We have our own work to do. Time to put on our face." 3. Cleona. Collecting all the food she made, Keavy bolted into the yard. She spotted Erin doing her work too, taking care of the yard. In the briefest moment possible, she nuzzled Erin's neck. Her hands were still full with that basket of food. Erin smiled. "You look like a wreck." "I love you, Erin," was Keavy's only reply, as she spotted her destination, a faded red gypsy wagon, and inside it lived a sensation. She recalled the days of her father's love into her memory, when an old and beggarly gypsy woman asked him for a spot of tea. She remembered how fond of old Cleona she was even back then, and how her father gave her a place to park when she wasn't traveling again. Keavy knocked and entered the wagon. "I'm sorry that I'm late, but I made up for it. See, I put an extra loaf on your plate." The old woman in her gypsy garb turned round and said, "Thank you, but be mindful of your stepmother. She'd gladly tell me to shoot. She'd gladly tell me to shoo if she had the slightest inkling that you brought me so much food." "Yes, Madam Cleona, but remember my father was strong. He made sure that legally you can stay here until you're gone." She bade Cleona a fond farewell with a hug and a kindly kiss. There were still many more chores that she couldn't afford to miss. 4. A promise stays a promise. The humid night air was oppressive and hot when Keavy and Erin went to bed. They wore no blankets, nor much sleep clothes, nor bonnets upon their head. Their room was up in the attic, and they slept in 2 tiny cots, and while they wished for something more, they never required a lot. "Erin," Keavy said with a sigh, as the stars and moon twinkled in the night sky, "will you tell me more of Mom and Dad?" "You say that as if I never have." Erin sighed, then giggled, while curled up in her cot. "What I remember of Mother was never a lot. She died giving birth to you, Keavy. You were just a baby, and I was only 3. But I remember her singing was as soft as cotton, and the songs that she sang to me will never be forgotten. But she took ill. Her hair was blonde and straight, golden like the wheat from our farmer's freight. And she loved to dance, as we do too, and she's in heaven now. One day we'll be too. I wish I had known her, or remembered her voice, but I suppose while I'm here I don't have a choice. Tell me about Father. He was so strong and kind." "I'm tired, Keavy." "Then just speak your mind. I just miss all our time to talk. When you work outside, I don't see you a lot." Erin groaned and pointed to a box under a chair.
"Open that. You'll find I have letters in there."
Keavy did as she was told, and she brought them to Erin. Erin looked them over, and then began telling.
"I've been writing to princes and governors, that sort, to try and get to know them, and see if they'll court. Most of them knew Father, and by extension know me. If I can be married, I'll finally be free. No more outdoor days in the hot summer sun, and my victory over Stepmother will finally be won."
Keavy frowned sadly, and began to cry.
"What did Father tell us right before he died? He said to take care of Claudette and Colette, and to be obedient to Stepmother's will, and to let her run the household as she sees fit. We can't abandon our home, not for 1 minute."
Erin flustered and heavily sighed. He wouldn't if he had known of Stepmother's pride.
"A promise is a promise, no matter what comes. A promise stays a promise. Okay, I'm not dumb. I will not leave you alone with them, and I'll see what alternatives I have. It's only the many hot hours of work that make me so very sad. But a promise stays a promise. It's as you say. Let's get some sleep. Tomorrow is another day."
5. A ball for the prince. Claudette screamed and clawed her way toward the letter to which Colette clung. Colette shrieked and backed away. In her sister's directions she swung. Keavy walked in and saw the commotion, and spared not a second of time. She opened the door to the backyard and beckoned Erin with mime. Erin came running into the house and tried to demand some peace, but her stepsisters fought so very often, and they never minded her in the least. But then they all heard footsteps, echoing down the stairs, and the only one with cadence that slow was Madame Valentina Colbert. As she strode into the kitchen, everyone stopped. All eyes met hers, and they all gawked. Erin snapped too, and took the letter from Colette. She gave it to Valentina, gave a curtsy, then wiped her sweat. Valentina studied the letter for a second or two, then began to read aloud what I'm about to write out for you.
From the Council of Tynwald, to the people of Man, and to every young maiden across our fair land, it has come to our attention that this generation has been plagued by bachelorhood that has been most obscene. A majority of your lords in Tynwald are unmarried and unhappy. It is quite bizarre. So to rectify this, we invite you all to a special Tynwald-sponsored grand ball. Simply bring this note with you to the Tower of Brick, and your household will be let in. Sincerely, Chief Minister Liam Ulfrick.
There was a pause of silence as Valentina finished, followed by 2 girlish squeals. The twins' zeal was undiminished. They ran upstairs immediately to work on their own appearance, while Erin curtsied low, practicing her adherence.
If you please, I'd like to attend. We'll discuss this another time. Get back to your chores, young one, and maybe that'll enter my mind.
Erin glided out of the room, her smile shining bright, through the dirt and muck and filth that was so often her plight. Keavy smiled as Erin left, and Valentina went upstairs. She didn't care to go to this silly ball, but her happiness was there. She was happy for her sisters, especially Erin, who knew if she would get her dream, and be able to find a man. Then a pang of loneliness ran through her little heart. What if Erin did and left them, and broke her promised part? Keavy then went back to chores, not sure what to feel, not sure if she was in the right, and not sure if this was real. 6. Surrogate. The day seemed normal as Keavy cleaned and worked on her daily routine. The sun outside was bright and warm and made her indoor water steam. She kept on working and humming to herself as the day went by, until around 11 o'clock when Erin came in, dry. When I say dry, I mean sunburned, scorched, and thirsty beyond belief. Keavy dropped her mop and ran over to her, stricken with empathetic grief. Erin collapsed into a chair, though she didn't mean to. Keavy quickly brought her water, and Erin's mind was askew. After Erin greedily gulped several glasses down, she filled her canteen and tried to rise, but Keavy bade her no with a frown.
I have to get...
She started and stopped, her mind stirring aimlessly.
I cannot let Valentina see me. I've got to go pull the weeds. You don't normally pull the weeds. The gardeners come by for that. Why are they making you do extra work? Have you fed the cat?
Erin coughed roughly and raggedly and took another gulp down her throat.
Erin, please, why is this happening? Is this some kind of sick joke? They're afraid that I'll get married to some powerful lord, taking an opportunity from the twins and leaving this family's chores. So they're trying to make me sick, and I don't believe I can go. I'm supposed to fill my canteen at noon. I still have an hour to go. And what's more, I'm not even close to done. Keavy, I fear that I am simply not going to be able to go. I will not be able to attend.
Keavy looked down for a moment, saddened by her sister's news. But then Erin's face broke a smile, and Keavy was left confused.
"What on earth are you smiling about? I thought you were trying to be sad." "I just thought of something that changed my heart all the way to glad. Keavy, you should go to the ball. I don't care if you socialize. You deserve to do something fun, dress up, see different skies. In fact, you should wear Mother's old dress. No one would begrudge you this, especially our father. He longed for us this bliss."
Keavy's eyes began to fill, and she held her sister's hand.
"If you want me to go, I trust your judgment then. It sounds like it might be fun. What with fanciful decor and letters, just focus on getting through this. Just focus on getting better."
7. Dress. That night, Erin slept like a rock, but was woke up early to be greeted by her sister, dear Keavy. Keavy always awoke when the stars were still shining. She liked to play for a while before the twins started whining. Erin rarely rose early, but this morning had been set to take a look with Keavy at their mother's old dress. Erin rose groggily, and Keavy felt for her, but the smile on Erin's face left nothing unsure. Erin would rather face the day, sick and without rest, than see Keavy miss the ball because she had no dress. Keavy carefully lit a candle and helped Erin to her feet. They both got down on their knees, and under the bed they did peek. With only a whispered word or two, they pulled out a cedar chest. They unlatched the locks and looked inside, and they saw the dress. It had been sitting in that case for almost a full decade, and the last time it had adorned their mother, Erin was shorter than a spade. The silky fabric was as blue as the sea. The trim was as white as snow. The designs and whorls gave a sense of ice. Silver sparkles made it glow. Keavy let out a stuttered gasp. Erin shushed her sternly. Then she whispered to remind Keavy, "It is far too early." They began to lift up the dress and continued in whispered tones.
"I suspect we'll have to alter it a bit, depending on how you've grown."
Keavy stripped off her sleeping clothes, and they worked to put it on, and soon any doubts about fitting were completely gone. Erin stared in amazement at how her sister filled out every inch of the dress perfectly.
"I suppose we'll forget that route."
Keavy smiled and stared into their dirty mirror, but quickly whirled around when she heard quiet choking from her sister. Erin was quietly vomiting up into a nearby pail, and Keavy's joy of wearing the dress quickly began to fail.
"Erin, you need to work inside today. We have to ask to switch chores." "Valentina would never do that. She'd simply give me more."
Erin slowly pulled herself up and trudged off to start her day. Keavy felt very helpless and sad, but she didn't want to feel this way. She turned back to their mirror again and imagined herself with a man, dancing and twirling at the ball, he always holding her hand, and surprisingly did not think ill of it, though she reaffirmed in her mind her place was here with her family, even if one day his mind decided that he'd marry her. She'd make sure her family would be cared for with plenty of wonderful servants and comfortable monetarily. She took one last look at the dress before she put it away. She thought of how happy her father would be to see his girl dressed that way. 8. The Lord takes away. Keavy swept her bedroom, and Erin worked outside. Keavy couldn't help but notice the way Erin's steps were wide. She watched Erin from her bedroom window, worrying all the while. The happiness of earlier had left their faces. Worry and pain replaced their smiles. The sun beat down on Erin, and Keavy watched in dismay. Erin couldn't help but notice her body was failing this day. She slowly trudged forward until something broke her stride. She tumbled forward and laid on the ground, wondering why she couldn't cry.
"No!"
Keavy screamed as she ran down the stairs, knocking over servants in her way. She tore past everyone with reckless abandon. Not a single heed did she pay. When Keavy finally found herself outside, Madame Cleona was there. She was holding Keavy's wrist and softly stroking her hair. A few seconds later, as Keavy dropped to her knees, Valentina and the twins had arrived. Valentina dabbed at tears, and the twins both sighed.
"I'm sorry, Keavy,"
was all Cleona said, and Keavy's heart shattered in pieces. Her soul cried out in unutterable anguish, in tandem with her sorrowful increases. Her last blood relative was dead in her arms. Her sobbing turned into moans, for now she was without parents or sister. She was now completely alone.
"Wake up! Wake up!"
Keavy shouted in panic, as her body caught up with her mind. Valentina and the twins stood in stunned silence as Keavy mourned for her kind. Valentina stood straight, with a face cold and numb.
"Nothing can be said, nothing can be done. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. We've dealt with grief before, and we will again this day. Contact our relatives, tell them the tragedy. Erin is gone, but she will live in God's majesty."
9. Guest of Honor. The Chief Minister Liam Ulfrick spoke with his confidants. Tea time was a pleasure they all knew well, and everyone did want to hear the stories of each other's lives without being so comically vain. About details and formats like on their reports, sometimes it drove them insane. "I say, Stanley, did I hear correctly? Valentina Marie has lost another? Wasn't she the widow who came to Ferric before he died too, my brother?"
"Yes, your grace. Before that, he was a widower too. His wife, Alicia, died very suddenly, and the daughters they left were two. Now there remains one blood kin to Sir Ferric and his line. I believe her name is Keavy.
Do we have the time to visit this family and attend the funeral?" Liam's secretary spoke up.
"Unfortunately, your grace, there's no spare time at all."
"This ball has become more trouble than it's worth. But very well, I suppose. Secretary, go to their house with this verbal message, and see that all of them know. They are especially invited to the Tynwald ball, especially young Keavy. She will be my guest of honor."
"I do as you've given me."
10. A personal invitation. The funeral for Erin wasn't intended to be very much of an ordeal, but word of Sir Ferric's daughter's death couldn't help but make people feel. So many more gathered on the grounds of the house where Madame Valentina did lodge, and of the many people that came, it was quite the hodgepodge. There were poor gypsies related to Cleona that came from very far away. There were merchants from town nearby who came to grieve and pray. And there were even government officials from Tynwald, strong and fair. And one came to speak with Valentina after the final prayer.
"Excuse me, Madame Valentina, I am the secretary too. The Chief Minister, Sir Liam Ulfrick, and he instructed me to speak to you. We assume you've received our invitation to the Tynwald ball. We would be pleased if you would accept and attend."
"Many thanks to you all."
"May I take a moment and extend this message to Keavy?"
Valentina's countenance dropped.
"It's only to invite her personally."
Valentina hesitated. but nodded her consent, and the secretary marched off to Keavy, who was sitting at present. She was under a tree, her head bowed low, in between her legs. She hugged her knees close to her chest and drank her sorrow's dregs. As the secretary approached her, she wiped her tearful eyes and stared at him unknowingly and tilted her head to the side.
"Hello, Lady Keavy. Liam Ulfrick sends his sadness at hearing of the loss of your sister at a time that is so tragic. He extends his prayers and blessings to you, and hopes that you will attend the Tynwald ball in celebration for the Isle of Man."
Keavy's sadness lifted, just a little touch. She stopped her frown and hugged the man and said, "Thank you very much." The secretary was surprised by this, but hugged her anyway, thinking of his own daughter, and the sister Keavy lost in a day.
11. Quizzes and Questions. Later on, when the funeral was over, the four women walked back to their home. Claudette and Colette asked many questions about when Keavy was alone with the secretary from Tynwald. "What all did he say?" "He expressed condolences for my loss, and he said that I may attend the Tynwald ball with Liam Ulfrick as my host." "You're joking!" Claudette shouted, as if she'd just seen a ghost. Claudette took a look at her mother, who was looking unnervingly calm. "Mother, is she telling a lie?" "Claudette, there's nothing wrong." Then they arrived back at their house, and Valentina pulled out a pan. She put it on their iron stove and grabbed some garlic at hand. "Oh, I can do that. You don't have to." "Nonsense, Keavy, love. I need some time to think alone. Go play with your sisters above. Go to your room and show them what you have been working on." Keavy had a feeling, but wasn't quite sure. Something felt very wrong. The tea tables turn. 12. The tea tables turn. Claudette, Colette, and Keavy went up to look at her dress. The stepsisters looked uncomfortable in the attic. Perhaps it was all the mess. Keavy cleaned the house all day, so her room would often be unclean and untidy, but she enjoyed the privacy. Keavy pulled her mother's dress out and placed it on a mannequin. She stepped back and observed it with her sisters, and she couldn't hide her grin. "It's really not a very good design. It doesn't take any chances. It's rather bland to me anyway. Nobody will be stealing glances." Before Keavy could defend the dress, or make a case either way, Madame Valentina came upstairs with teacups on a tray. "I rather like the dress's subtlety. It speaks in a manner profound." She pulled up a nightstand and set down the tray and began to pass cups all around. They talked peacefully with each other for a few moments, while heartache and emotions rang mute. But Madame Valentina's kindness quickly began to dilute. Erin told me how well the dress fits you, though I'm not sure exactly why. Is it that you're simply bulky enough, or was your mother scrawny and spry?" Claudette and Colette giggled gleefully at the backhanded joke, but more than Keavy's heart sank at that, when she began to choke. Keavy tried her best to stand so she could breathe unhindered. Her limbs fell slack and her cup fell, shattering the ceramics to splinters. Valentina helped Keavy sit upright as Keavy began to heave. "Oh my word, it looks like you're sick. Well, at least you'll have time to grieve." Keavy was putting the pieces together, and she thought about her tea.
It didn't taste particularly good, but that could just be from the leaves. She didn't want to ever believe Valentina would doctor her tea, just so she would miss the ball, but there wasn't another answer she could see. Once Keavy was breathing well, Valentina turned her eyes to the dress. But the evil thoughts spinning inside her head no one could have guessed. "Girls, bring that filthy rag at once." The girls hesitated for a second. They looked at each other and smiled. Then Valentina's finger beckoned. They brought the dress over to their mother, and then she asked for a pot. There simply was no end to how cruel Valentina got. Keavy tried to scream and to stop them, but had no strength for that, as they put the dress into the pot and burned it until it was black. Now, Valentina said, wiping away Keavy's tears. "You're going to need a lot of rest. You'll be too sick for the ball, I fear." The three women left the room, leaving Keavy all alone, wondering what could have created these hearts made out of stone. 13. A visitor. The following evening, Keavy laid sick on the bed upon which she fell, and she heard her family leave the house without even a simple farewell. They were no doubt leaving to attend the ball, but Keavy did scarcely care. Her fever had reached an all-time high, and all she could do was stare. She stared at the ceiling, too tired to cry, and too tired to think about much, too tired to hear the footsteps of someone inside her attic hutch. Keavy could barely see her as she walked into the room, but something told Keavy there was nothing to fear. There was no danger or doom. Finally, a voice came from the visitor. "It looks as though they are gone." Then Cleona came over to Keavy. "They've treated you so wrong." Keavy roused her strength to speak, and Cleona didn't stop her. "I wish I was in heaven with my family. Now nothing is for sure." "One thing is for sure, my dear. If you give up now, those mongrel French beasts you call family will stay disgusting cows." Cleona removed a vial from a pocket in her dress. "I loved your father as a son. This I have to stress. Years ago, before he met your mother, your father traveled with me. He came with my people and traveled the world as an adopted gypsy. But when he met your mother, he gave up that life. He had 2 little girls instead of seeing every sight. He let me live on his newfound land, and when your mother died, he told me to be kind to Valentina and her kin, but this I cannot hide. There comes a time, Keavy, because they are so rotten, to give them what they so rightly deserve and repay them for all you have gotten. I know that Ferric would choose you, his own flesh and blood." Just then she helped Keavy drink the vial. The liquid on her throat was a flood. 14. Waking up. After drinking the buttery fluid inside Cleona's vial, Keavy shuddered and fell into a sleep that lasted quite a while. When she awoke, she heard the sound of hooves on cobblestones, and as her eyes opened, she realized a carriage had taken her from home. She looked around the ornate gypsy wagon and was mystified by it all. It seemed all of her life was in the art painted across the walls. But the next thing she noticed was very strange. A man with a sickly green face. He stepped up to her, handed her a letter, and slipped out of the door to his place. She realized he was a footman of the carriage, and though he was green as kale, she also thought when he left the carriage she had seen a tail. She opened the letter he handed her, but before she read she saw a beautiful woman across from her on the opposite wall. But then she realized this wasn't true, and she stood up to see herself in a dress quite like her mother's, but redesigned like the gypsies. She looked at herself in that mirror and was amazed at the work. Then she remembered the letter and opened it with a jerk. "Please mind the footman," it said. "I only had lizards for the job. Hopefully he is a nice lizard, though. He did seem a little odd." She skipped down a bit and then saw, "P.S. Magic, that is how." It was signed by her good and dear friend Cleona, and all Keavy could say was, "Wow." She then turned the paper and saw these words, "P.P.S. dear, this may sound absurd, but you must be back by the stroke of midnight. That's when the spell ends. Have a good time tonight." She then heard trumpets just up ahead, and she peeked out of her window and saw flags of red. They were approaching the great buildings where the Tynwald ball was already taking place inside those grand halls. 15. Keavy goes to the ball. In the grand ballroom, Valentina spoke to Chief Minister Ulfrick and laughed at his jokes. "You are wonderful, Sir Liam. How is it that you are without a wife when you shine like a star?"
"Alas, my duties keep me occupied, and I have yet to see a woman who can tear me from my country. Excuse me, where is Keavy?"
"Unfortunately, she came down with a fever and a cold. She is brave, and I hope she pulls through."
"That is indeed very unfortunate. I hope you are doing all that you can do."
There was an awkward silence as Valentina smiled on.
"Would you care to dance with my girls? They've practically been ready since dawn."
Just then another guest was announced, and all looked up to see the beautiful form of a young and blonde woman, the daughter of Sir Ferric, Keavy. Valentina sputtered and tried to speak as Keavy entered the hall, but Liam pressed right past her with no excuse at all. He welcomed Keavy with a low bow as gossip began to flow. "Welcome, Lady Keavy, to our ball. There is something I must know. May I have this dance with you? I know you've just arrived." Keavy simply curtsied, and he led her to the floor. Everyone cleared around him, and the musicians produced a score that seemed to flow like a gentle breeze through the summer and the heat. Madame Valentina blankly stared on with no words to speak.
"Thank you for your kindness, my lord, and the letter you sent to me."
"Think nothing of it, Keavy, my dear. Your father meant much to me. Though I can't say much for his choice of Valentina. She told me you were sick today." Keavy blushed and looked at his boots. "Perhaps her memory is frayed."
"Perhaps her memory is frayed."
Liam stopped dancing at once with Keavy, and she looked up at him. "Let's proceed to the balcony to talk. Something seems rather grim." 16. Glass slippers. Liam led Keavy out to the balcony, and the two began to talk. The moon and stars were shining brightly, and the loom of autumn stalked in the clear navy-blue night sky where fireflies danced and twirled. All was beautiful except the hidden heart of Keavy's inner little girl. "I have a sense of justice," Liam began. "I try to be fair and kind, but what I've heard reported to me absolutely boggles my mind. I hear of a tragedy regarding your sister and how she suddenly died.
Then I hear from Valentina's servants how Erin was despised. And then I hear reports from that funeral day how Valentina forced herself to shed tears and did not feel real dismay. All of this seems to be hearsay, so I must hear it from you. Did Valentina try to keep you at home? Tell me, what did she do? Keavy took several moments, but was unable to speak. Liam began to speak again. You are very sweet. I loved your father, and I love my own. They were the best of friends. Even though you were a baby and I a child, my memories do not end. I played in your house often, and in my youngest years, and your father was a wonderful man. He inspired me to fear both our Lord and his law. He was a mentor to me. Please, for his sake, open your mouth and set your grieving heart free.
There have been many horrible things that have come to me, thanks solely to the work of my stepmother and her treatment of Erin and me. But like you said, all of them are stories and hearsay. None of them can be proven, so with them I must stay.
Liam took Keavy by the hand and looked in her eyes to her soul. Perhaps there is another way. Perhaps there is a loophole. The clock struck 11, and Keavy remembered she had an hour's ride to go. She remembered she had to be back at midnight, so much to her sadness and woe. She swallowed and touched Liam's cheek tenderly, then said, I must leave. Is there something you can give me, so that I may call on you, please? They may try to keep me from you, but if I have a token, I will be able to prove your invitation and everything you have spoken. Keavy simply smiled and nodded, and she took off her shoes. She realized that they were made of glass, but even then they gave no abuse. She would never have known about them. They were so comfortable. She then took the ribbon by which her hair was tied and handed them over. Her heart was full.
Goodbye,
Keavy said as she took her leave, thinking of how Liam had given her the courage to continue to hope and believe. 17. Happiness. The crickets chirped their cheerful songs, and the night bugs melodiously droned. The last remaining fireflies of summer set the visual tone. Through bushes and across the paths, Keavy danced and hummed, wearing a simple blue cloth dress, feeling contently numb. She petted the lizard who she danced with, and then she let him go, back into Cleona's garden, and she waved goodbye to her new friend in the moonlight glow. Cleona came out and hugged Keavy, and wordlessly they spoke. Keavy's happiness was just as thick as a cloud of smoke. Cleona took her inside her wagon and put her young friend to bed, while thoughts of love mixed with freedom danced within her head. 18. Cruelty. Though the night Keavy slept, with a smile that would not end, completely unaware of anything but bliss, know what's around the bend. That is, until a bucket of cold cinders was dumped all over her face, and she scrambled up to protect herself and find a safer place. She heard the voices of her sisters screaming insults at her. She rubbed her eyes and looked around. Everything was a blur. She saw Cleona tied up in a corner, and her sisters were throwing eggs, feathers, flour, and other dirty things at her head, down to her legs. I will not write the insults that they hurled at Keavy. They were all blatant and wrong and even contradictory. Keavy balled up under the pressure. The sisters vehemently pressed down. Then once they ran out of things to throw, they dragged her face in the ground. Outside, they pulled her resisting body and kicked and punched her there. They scratched at her face and at her back, but Valentina did nothing but stare. Keavy's stepmother stood by and watched, arms folded, smiling with glee at the savagery, barbarism, and hate in her daughter's great cruelty. Suddenly 11 horses rode up. Valentina and daughters scattered. The horses reared and bucked angrily. Keavy didn't know what was the matter. She covered her head and wept in the dust, and pleaded for the chaos to stop. Her tears, blood, and all manner of filth splashed in the horses' clip-clops. 19. Liam calls on Keavy. "I've come to call on Keavy," Liam's deep voice rang out. Claudette and Colette jeered him and threw mud at him and his scouts. Valentina told them to stop before things got out of hand. "Chief Minister Liam Ulfrick, you are trespassing on my land." "I have an invitation, Madam Valentina, and I've come for Keavy's hand." Valentina practically snorted as he produced from his saddlebag the glass slippers and hair tie. He waved the hair ribbon like a flag. "Those could have belonged to anyone." Liam ignored her and bent down. He wiped the mud out of Keavy's eyes and slightly pulled up her gown. He placed a slipper on each foot, and the fit was miraculously perfect. It seemed to have the lines for the veins in her feet. It was quite an amazing effect. Liam pulled Keavy to her feet. She cried and embraced him hard. Then came a voice even deeper than Liam's. It was the captain of the guard.
"Everyone inside the house this instant. We have business at hand."
Everyone obeyed the captain then. Everyone heard his command. 20. Love and Justice.
"Justice will prevail,"
Liam announced as he paced back and forth in the foyer of the house that was Sir Ferrick's place.
"For the one trespass we've witnessed today, you could all have many years in jail. Beating a woman mercilessly like that, again, justice shall prevail."
There was a murmuring among his troops, and he felt Keavy's touch on his arm. He let her pull him aside and listened as if charmed. After a few agonizing moments, he turned back to Valentina and her girls.
"You will leave the Isle of Man, never to return to this world. You 3 are hereby banished by the authority of these witnesses and myself. Pack, be gone, you 3.
Valentina gave one final glare, and Keavy turned away, to look in the face of her savior, Liam, her expressions like the sun's rays. Cleona was found and brought inside. She was not worse for wear, and once Valentina and her daughters left, celebration filled the air.
"Captain, coordinate the servants to prepare a feast."
The captain obeyed his orders, not hesitating in the least. Then Liam called his secretary. "Marry us, won't you, sir?" Keavy began to cry. Everything was a blur. "What's wrong, my dearest Keavy?" he said, wiping hairs from her face.
"You have seen the real me, sir, and it's more than I can take. I am but a servant girl. It's all I've ever known. My father was a type of royalty, but I've been stuck here all alone. This filth and muck you see on me, this is how I am, not the beautiful lady from the ball."
"That is where you are wrong, ma'am. You have a love that endures through every trial and pain. A love like that is more attractive than any physical gain. And though you may be covered in cinders, eggs, muck, and filth, love endures through all that pain and any lingering guilt. Love endures when people die and you lose the will to fight, for love knows you will see them again by the dawning of heaven's light. And if love can endure the race until the journey's end, love will find and marry justice, and the two will forever blend." And of that period in Keavy's life, this is the final chapter. But beyond this story lies more and more, where they lived happily ever after. The end.